Thanks. So this topic actually generates from a larger project that we have at NCAR on data citation. So we were interested in promoting data sets as citable objects, similar to a publication, a typical peer-reviewed publication. So our interest in peer review really came from how do we assert that a data set is of high enough quality to say as a published item, just like you would say a publication is peer-reviewed and published. So we're interested in the topic of data peer review. And so what we're looking at really is more of the process right now. We don't have a process in place, but we're looking at how would you assert the quality of a data set. And we're using what our current repositories do in evaluating data sets as kind of a template for that, and thinking about how does the peer review process translate from a publication to a data set. And so in a lot of ways it does work, but in a lot of ways it doesn't work in terms of data sets are much more granular. They often change over time, which publications typically don't do. In addition, there will be a lot of people who contribute to a data set in terms of the software, quality control, and the data sort of structures, as well as the scientific validity that typically don't get looked at in publications. So it's similar but different.
It sounds like one of the key things in your research is that you're looking for automated ways to do this evaluation. So it's kind of peer review by bot or something.
That's definitely part of it, because there's just no way you can peer review the number of data sets that are coming out right now. And in a lot of ways, the peer review process is already challenged by the number of papers and proposals that are going in. But I think that's an interesting question, because there's automation, which is necessary. But at the same time, there needs to be some human in the loop just to do sort of basic sense making of graphing, visualizations. Those are the kinds of things that already happen in terms of looking at whether there's problems in a data set. So I think there needs to be some kind of combination of both.
Well, what kind of procedure would say test a data set to sort of check the quality, or what would you say? Maybe we should define what quality means in a data set.
Well, and that's yeah. So I mean that's a very contextual question, right? The quality depends on the use. If you just want to use it to sort of see that your instrument is running, any kind of data is good. But if you want, or that your model will run. But if you want to do a very high level of scientific analysis at a very fine level of granularity, then you need to know the quality has been certified. In terms of the processes that are in place, repositories do a number of things, from flagging questionable data to comparing one data set to another, or comparing a model run to observational data sets. In addition, repositories do a lot of metadata generation, so they'll make sure that they have a certain level of documentation of the methods, the instruments, the data structures themselves, things like that, to allow you to at least check whether there's appropriate information that goes along with that data.
Now, is there a minimum standard, or any standard at all, in terms of what metadata is required to get this done, to kind of get this kind of testing done?
Well, each repository kind of has their own minimum standard for what they require from a metadata perspective, and that really relates to the kinds of data that they collect, as well as the users that they have. So users might have a certain type of information that they always need, particularly about a model versus an observational data set. In addition, repositories, at least at NCAR, have the expectation that their data sets are going to be usable for the long term, or that they would like them to be usable for the long term. So they need to collect a high level of metadata to ensure that they can understand them, but also the next generation of scientists and data managers can understand those data as well.
Is it possible to separate model data sets from observational data sets in terms of how you approach this problem, in terms of peer reviewing them?
I would imagine it's a similar process, but I think there's slightly different types of comparisons that go on. It's also perhaps a different scale, because the model data sets are so large and so granular. There's also, I think, a question of the modeling projects, especially at the large data centers like NCAR, are so big. There's so many components that you would need to evaluate, from the ice components, the atmospheric components, and so on. So I imagine it's a similar process, but just kind of different in kind.
Another thing about peer review is that it involves several different points of view, usually resolving disagreements. Do you imagine that this is the kind of thing where with a data set you don't really need different points of view? You kind of just go at it with one evaluation procedure and that should suffice? Do you know what I mean? It's a different kind of...
I would actually disagree with that because I would say you definitely need multiple perspectives if you sort of think about peer review of data set in kind of the literal sense, because there are different aspects of a data set that you can look at, and different people have different expertises. And what I mean is, what I'm referring to here is the scientists, if you ask scientists to peer review a data set, you would get one type of review. If you ask a software engineer to review a data set, you would get another type of review. A data manager perhaps would give you a different type of review because they would have different things they would be interested in looking at and would be able to look at with a certain high level of expertise. So I would say it's probably that it would be well advised to have multiple types of people look at a data set in terms of thinking about the overall quality of it.
And can some of that multiple viewpoint aspect of peer review be done automatically?
Well, the repositories will tell you as much automation as you can do, the better. So right now, they all do as much automation as they can of their workflows and their pipelines to get as many checks as they can automated, just so they can make their processes more efficient.
And then in terms of the feedback to the authors of the data set, what is that? What is the possibility for fixing and for responding to review information?
Well, that's one of the main differences between data sets and a typical journal publication is the possibility for revision, because the data set publication process is not maybe as singular as it is with a journal article. All of the NCAR repositories have feedback mechanisms built in where a user can contact the archive to say, here's a problem that I found, or here's a question that I have about a data set. And that mechanism, I think, is actually vitally important, and it's fundamentally a part of what these archives do, is provide that user support. So revisions to data set happen when as necessary. I wouldn't say it's common, but it certainly happens from time to time.
Well, thank you very much. It's a fascinating topic.
Thank you.